just a quick fire tone of voice masterclass for all of those who want to have a go at this themselves. So step one, and this is step one with every piece of copy that I ever write, we start by listening to customers. So the best thing that I think you can do is to just get on the phone, talk to people, even if you can just get 10 minutes of their time. I would say 20 minutes is ideal. Sit down and talk about their experiences with your brand, the products they've tried. Even try and get to talk to a few people who haven't experienced your brand to see, you know, what are their perceptions, what have they heard. You can also hold some focus groups. If you're short on time and you can't do all the interviews, you can get a bunch of people into a room at the same time. So if you're a restaurant, perhaps you could just set aside your private dining room, get 8 or 10 people in a room and get them talking. The only thing to watch out with in focus groups is that people tend to follow that sort of herd mentality. So you might find them following what one person volunteers, and people will back it up. Another good thing to do is to run a survey so you can get some quantitative data. So interviews, we would usually do between 10 to 15 interviews, and that gives you plenty to go on. Whereas if you run a survey, you can maybe reach 500 or more respondents, and you can get some more trend stuff, so you can find out a bit more about who the people are, what kind of products they've used of yours, you know, what their demographic is, that kind of thing. And if you don't have time to put any time into doing interviews or focus groups or surveys, a really quick fix trick that you could do is what we call review mining. So you can go on your Google or your TripAdvisor reviews, Facebook reviews, and just see what people are saying about your brand. What are they complaining about? What do they love? And how do they articulate those things that they hate or love about your brand? So always start with the customer, because in the end, it's them you want to talk to. So you want to make sure that your tone of voice resonates with them. So step 2 would be to create your customer avatar. So the customer avatar is what we call the sort of description of your single ideal customer. And it's important that you pick that you focus on just one and not try to be everything to everybody. So just picture who is your ideal customer. If you could pick one person to clone and to bring to your brand over and over and over in multiples of hundreds or thousands, who would that person be? So really try and bring that customer to life so that you can picture them when you're writing. It's actually quite useful to start with someone you know. So if you picture an actual person, you can almost like speak to that person while you're writing and sort of say, like, what would this person say if I told her this? So at 2Forks, my ideal customer is based on Punky from Rosal's Thai, who is my favorite, well, I can't have favorites, but one of my favorites customers. She's just so energetic and keen on learning and interested, and she's up for any kind of testing that we want to throw her way, which I love. So whenever I look at developing a new service or a new offer, I think, oh, what would Punky say if I told her this about that? So it really helps to have that person in front of you. Think about what really matters to them when it comes to the relationship between you, your product, and that person. And how do they speak about these things that really matter? So sure, it's good to look into personal things like their age and their gender, their family situation. Have they got kids? Where do they live? Where do they work? What do they earn? All of those kind of basic data. But what I think is more important when it comes to tone of voice is finding out, how do they fit in around your product? So what are their values? Like, what matters to them? Do they care about sustainability? Do they care about supporting local producers where you buy your food from? That kind of thing. What are some of the challenges that might stop them from buying from you? And what are the possible objections that they might have to your brand and why they would go with someone else? So trying to really dig into that kind of stuff. And also think about, you know, if you're a restaurant, where else do they go out? What are the brands that they really like? If you're a food producer, perhaps where do they shop? And also for everyone, where do they get their information? So what newspapers, what magazines, what websites do they use? What social accounts do they follow? What events do they go to? Who are their idols? Who are the people in the industry that they follow? So dig into those and try to create a really full picture of the person. So describe the person, Who are they? What are they really about? What do they care about? And maybe even attach a name and a picture to it, so that every time that you sit down to write, you picture that person and you write to them. The easiest way to write any kind of copy is to just picture yourself talking to a person that's a real human, and just talk to them, and the copy will just follow. That's what I do every day, and it hasn't failed me for 7 years. So that's step 2. And then can't seem to go to the next slide. That's weird. Oh no, disaster.
So just frozen up.
It's frozen.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, here we go. 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, there we go. Right, so now that you know a lot about your ideal customer, this is a good time to revisit your own brand values, if you have those already, and then think about how they fit in with the things that you know really matters to your customers. So which of the brand values are definite keepers? Which ones do you think you can really work with, and they resonate already with the customer? And are there any of them, after you've talked to all of these customers, are there any of them that you need to evolve? Have you discovered any themes of things that really matter to people that isn't covered in your brand values? Perhaps you want to swap some of them out and start over. So just revisit your brand values and see that they still apply. Then step 4 would be to establish your brand voice pillars. Quite often these are the same as your brand values, and I would definitely suggest that you keep them as close to the brand values as possible. Ideally, stick to 3 of them, definitely no more than 5. So these are single words that are quite action focused. So they are things that your brand is all about, and you have to make sure that these are really honest and they're applicable to everything you do. So a really common brand value for people is to be sustainable. And I think if that is one of your core values or tone of voice pillars, you've got to make sure that that could be applied to everything that you do. It doesn't matter, like, you know, if all you do is provide paper straws in your bar, if you do nothing else around sustainability, if you try to focus your brand messaging around that, it will just not ring true and people won't believe you. So making sure that they're honest and applicable. So once you've got your tone of voice pillars, put them to work and focus on real scenarios where you need to communicate with spoken or written words. So for example, you would use the template, because we do X, we say Y. So because, for example, we believe in supporting local businesses, we talk about our suppliers on a first name basis to demonstrate that we know and we have a relationship with them. So in an email, that might be when we have an offer, we include the people involved in creating our product in some way. When we put out a press release, we name check our suppliers, something that they've done for us. On our menu, we might flag up where the produce is coming from, that kind of thing. So putting your tone of voice pillars to work in real situations. And then step 6 would be to rule out the no-nos. It's a lot easier to know what you don't want to sound like than to try and establish what you do want to sound like. So have a look at what other people are putting out there. See how their brand voice is resonating with you. So you might say, oh, like Innocent has a really funny, clever voice, but that's not really me. I don't want to sound like them. I don't want to be aping after them. But I really like this particular part of what someone's doing. But I really don't want to be seen as doing this. So maybe sitting down and thinking about words that you would hate if people associated with your brand. So once you have your list of the things that you definitely don't want to sound like, it's easier to rule out or to apply those and convert them into things that you do want to sound like. It can be quite useful to use celebrities as examples. So thinking about real people and the way that they speak, and just focusing down on the ones that you definitely don't want to sound like, giving those words or those voices faces so that you can easily picture what it is that you don't want to do. And then bringing your sound to life would be to take everything that you've learned so far, looking at those things that you don't want to do, and start plotting out how you do want to sound. So it's quite useful here to use celebrity examples again, and you can mix and match as much as you can. So taking those love-hate elements of certain voices. So you might decide that, oh, Anthony Bourdain's really straight-talking, inquisitive style when he's out traveling is great, but I hate to be the sort of sweary side of him. Or I really like the sound of Delia because she's so homey and caring and maternal, but I don't want to I don't want to sound as old as that. Or you know, you can mix and match little parts of different people's voices until you find a sort of 2 or 3 sentences that describe what it is that you want to sound like. Step 8 would be to start writing some stuff, any stuff. So picture your ideal customer, picture the sort of persona that you've given to your brand voice, and think about how would it sound if this person talked to that person about a particular thing. So pick any offer that you're about to put out there, and you know, instead of writing it, actually read out as if you're calling this person up on a phone call. Just get yourself into the persona that you've created and pretend that you're calling this other person and telling them about the offer, and record it when you do it. Listen back to it and ask yourself, do I sound like an actual human? If I was the person on the other end of the line, do I sound like someone I actually want to spend time with? Do I like this person? Does it sound genuine? And just keep doing this until you've hit a voice that you feel actually sounds great and makes you want to spend time with that voice. So once you've got all of this under your belt, you can start producing an in-house style guide. And there's definitely no need to start from scratch because there are lots of people who've done some work for you there. So almost every news publication has a published style guide online. I'm sure we'll share these slides later, but I've put in some links to the Guardian style guide, but that's very good, and the BBC style guide. So these are huge documents of multiple pages that goes into every grammatical rule and spellings about things. I would just go in there and highlight the things that you think really mattered to your voice. So you don't need to be a grammar nerd or play by every single rule book, but if there are certain things, like for example, like me, I hate the word whilst, so I would always say while rather than whilst. So for my personal style guide, I would definitely highlight that because I wouldn't want anyone writing for my brand to use that word. So I would use common sense. Don't try to write a sort of grammar Bible, because lots of people have done that already. Just highlight the things that you think will really matter to how your brand voice sounds. And make sure that you include commonly used words for your brand. So that would be the names of your directors and other key members, the names of dishes and products, so that everyone who doesn't write for your brand on a day-to-day level, day-to-day basis, but they might do some project work for you or whatever, they don't have to keep asking about those things. So they know exactly how to spell certain things. Also make sure you include any banned phrases. So words you hate, like I mentioned, or certain things that you would never ever say at the brand. So maybe even like, we would never swear, or we wouldn't use these particular swear words, or these are words that our director absolutely hates. Those are always good to include, particularly if you're a marketing department who wants to push out copy that needs to get approved really quickly. If you know that there are certain sticking points that the final person always signing off on things will always get annoyed by, or you want to eliminate any kind of situation where those things keep coming up and up, so that you can just produce copy that flows straight through. So including those banned names, banned words and phrases is good. And then my final step is to always prep a cheat sheet. Any tone of voice work is completely redundant if it's not used. And where you produce a big brand messaging guide or a big style guide document in multiple pages, it might get read once by the person who's really keen when they've just started working for you, but it's not going to get read on a day-to-day basis. So limit yourself to a single double-sided sheet that can be print it out. I usually, when we do tone of voice for our clients, we print them out on thicker paper, a bit like a menu, so it can live on the desk and it keeps getting referred to time and time again. So put all of those really essential things in there. Put a little introduction to your ideal customer. What are they all about? What are your brand pillars? How do those pillars work in practice? So actually type out those examples. Because we are X, we say Y. Put in a bit of detail about those celebrity examples. Like, we want to sound a little bit like Anthony Bourdain, but with a bit of like Delia kindness, but we don't want to sound like Jamie Oliver because we think he's too Essex, or I don't know, whatever, something like that. Include those things, include the banned words, include some really important grammar rules, and include a few practical examples of like, this is how we like our pack copy to look like, this is how we like our menu copy to look like. If you use a page layout program like InDesign or something like that, you can actually get quite a lot onto those two pieces of paper or two sides of one sheet, so that you can have a reference that people can keep referring back to. It should just live on people's desks. And a lot of people write for a brand, so it's not just your copywriter or your marketing team. A lot of people write for a brand on a day-to-day basis. Salespeople who contact customers in emails, it would be useful for them to have. So if you've got people who aren't used to writing with a brand voice in mind, it's also good to end a project like this by holding practical workshops with anyone that needs to use this brand voice. So bring that cheat sheet, sit people down, have a little practical thing, like, let's work on the type of stuff that you write for the brand. Try and use this worksheet. Let's write an email from scratch and picture yourself in these scenarios, or let's work on this bit of pack copy here, or let's work on this section of the menu, and work with it and update as you go. If people are running into difficulties and there's something in that tone of voice that doesn't quite ring, keep reporting back. These documents should be evolving creatures. So your voice might have to change with the times, or with new customers, or with new offers. So never see it as set in stone. Just keep working on them, and they can only get better. So that is me, I think. Last one. Yes, thanks very much for listening. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to hit me up on email.